Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway here on a Tuesday after the Labor Day weekend is complete. K-State is 1-1. Doesn't really feel like it. Not sure it really matters that they won on Saturday. Everybody's still mad, as they probably should be. And there's no reason right now to think that things are going to get better with what has been the consistent problems through two games this season. As we've talked about it at length, Drew, we don't think that Avery Johnson and Matt Wells are the problem. I think if you're look, they have things that they can get better, but everybody is going to have things that they can get better at. Those guys just what they're doing poorly right now is not costing this team the opportunity to win games. And as we saw on Saturday, one of those guys is the reason why you didn't have the most embarrassing loss in recent memory for your program. So we've got all that hanging over the stadium right now, the dark cloud over K-State football. And with all that in mind, they have to play Army this week, which if you listen and watch to Chris Kleiman, what he said, or seen how his team has played, that might scare the daylights out of you because he's talked about how bad eye discipline is once again. And if you thought that North Dakota threw some misdirection at you that you weren't able to handle, I think the Knights are going to be a little bit more intimidating than that because that's essentially all their offense is. So, what do you make initially of the matchup this week, Drew?
It is a matchup where if K-State can't get things fixed in a hurry defensively, it's a matchup that should terrify you because Army is all predicated on faking it one way, running one way, or having the quarterback run one way, and then you think they have the quarterback contained, and then he pitches it, and the pitch man takes it 60 yards. So in that standpoint, it's one that kind of scares you. But also, like I watched a pretty good chunk of Army and Tarleton on Friday night. Real ones grind that game live.
Yeah, I also, and I was like, there are other games on. Like I should maybe flip over, but I stayed with it until the very end.
But like watching that, their offense doesn't look anywhere explosive as it did last year. And like I don't think that's necessarily like all like Tarleton's defense because Army was still able to get a lot of yards, and especially on the ground, but they just they don't have like what seems like they're a home run hitter on this team. But I mean, we can kind of get into it. I was on a show with some BYU guys at BYU TV yesterday, talking about just like essentially doing what we're doing right now, which is like a State of the Union for K-State. And the thing that I said was the most fascinating thing of the entire kind of long weekend was what Chris Kleiman said yesterday at his press conference, where he basically said, if you don't have good eye discipline, I don't care if you're not as talented as somebody else. Like you're going to be the one that's playing if you have good eye discipline. Like that is fascinating to hear from the head coach because I even pointed it out after the game Saturday. Chris Kleiman's not one to really like throw his players under the bus, but like he got as close as he possibly could have on Saturday and then on Monday, saying like if you aren't doing the little things right or you don't have good eye discipline, you're going to be on the bench and on the sideline. So I'm really fascinated just by that kind of dichotomy. And K-State has practiced yesterday and they practiced today, which is different than last week. So like he said, we're going to know by after Tuesday's practice who is going to play and who is not based on eye discipline. And that is just fascinating to hear from the head coach that is usually very upbeat and very positive about where he's at or where his team is at. Especially he's harder on the defense, but has never really like kind of trashed them like he has in the last two press conferences.
Yeah, he is always harder on the defense. That's been kind of his thing, but he's flying much closer to the sun now with how he talks about it, and that's it's a good sign. It's good that you're seeing that. I mean, it illustrates he is as frustrated as I think you would want him to be. It just manifests differently for some people. Like if Bob Huggins or Frank Martin or Brad Underwood were running this thing, you'd have a lot more of a visual cue that they were upset. When it's somebody like Chris Kleiman or Jerome Tang or Bruce Weber or Bill Snyder, it can get stern at times, but it's not going to go like over the top. And I think that's where some people have a disconnect between thinking that like Kleiman doesn't care about this stuff. To me, it's very clear that he does. But like to some extent, I've given him the credit now dating back to November for how he's handled some of it. Like it was obvious to me, like after that Arizona State game, that he was not happy, was kind of defeated by it, and it continued through what we've seen now. But you still have to do something about it. Like at some point, we stop giving you credit for having the right emotions about the situation. Like your job is to fix the problems. And K-State, unfortunately, now over the last 7 games that they've played, all of the problems have been the same. We hear about eye discipline, sucking for the defense. Okay. That's been a common theme. The offensive line can't block a soul. We've heard that since the Houston game last year. Like repeatedly, the same mistakes are coming up over and over again. So that's the tricky spot that K-State and Chris Kleiman are in right now, is that you no longer can say the right things because you've said the right things for 7 games now, dating back to last year. You have to step up and actually do something about it, or people are going to continue to be mad, and they should.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Like, people should be upset by how K-State has played. I mean, they actually played better in Ireland, and I don't think that we anticipated that before the season beginning, that they would play better and lose in Ireland than they did when they won against North Dakota. But it's something that is concerning, that like the repeated mistakes really dating back to Houston keep showing up. Special teams being a disaster, defense being a disaster, offense not being able to run the ball. Like it's all kind of showing up over the last handful of games now. And they got away with it in the win over Rutgers. Cincinnati last year was just terrible. And K-State was able to roll, even with how bad they were playing at that point. Got away with against North Dakota. Now it's like kind of put up or shut up time of, if K-State comes out and blasts Army, I think that people feel a little bit better about where things are, even though you still don't feel great about the first 3 games at that point. But I think that you feel a little bit better. Like the early line, and you have it posted as 15.5 for K-State.
It's moved up now. It's to 17.5.
So, and now it's 17.5. If K-State covers the spread, I think that you see people kind of ease back. And I think that it would be kind of easy for us to kind of feel better about where things are going. If it's a 2 touchdown or less game after how poor Army looked against Tarleton, I think that's kind of where, the alarm bells go from like a 3 alarm fire to a 4 alarm fire. And you really start to get kind of concerned, because I don't know where it goes from there if the Army game doesn't look impressive. And we were talking before we started recording. I think that there's a world where if K-State can find a way to win these next 2 games, that they figure it out, because this is a tough game against Army. Even though they already lost to an FCS school, it's still an offense that you rarely ever see. It really, really stresses you and tests you defensively. The defense has been really bad over the last 6 quarters. If they can kind of shut down how Army plays, I think that you feel good about that. And then I've said all season long that road trip at Arizona on a Friday night, after you've already played 3 games, you just got done playing a triple option team, you're going to play a team that's going to really air it out. That game just kind of scares me, and has for a while. It's like you get to 3-1 going into your first bye, and then you host UCF, who looked absolutely terrible in a win against Jacksonville State. So you hope that you could win that, and then you're 4-1 going to a Baylor team that might end up being worse than we thought, because out of all the Big 12 teams that played last weekend, I think Baylor might have been the team that I was least impressed with. It doesn't look like their defense has gotten better at all for a year ago. And then,
because Jackson Arnold, believe it or not, didn't look very good at Oklahoma as a quarterback.
And it's not like he looked great against Baylor besides being able to run all over Baylor's defense. But then, like, you look at that also as like Baylor's offense didn't look like it got any better. It looked kind of stagnant from a year ago. Sawyer Robertson's numbers end up looking a lot better because of the last few drives, but he still threw the ball a ton and didn't really have a ton of yards. So I think that with that, you kind of look at that as like, okay, that Baylor game might be a touch easier than you expected. Still tough because it's a road game. Then you come home against TCU, and K-State has blasted TCU the last few times that they've played at home, and then you get another bye before the KU and Texas Tech games. Like, there's a way that if they win these next two, you can really figure it out and kind of go down the stretch and feel good about yourself. But these next two games will really test what I think that K-State is the rest of the year. And it's a scary thought, because looking at these next two opponents, they could not be more different stylistically.
Well, and honestly, like, the next two opponents, they're going to give your defense a lot of the things that you're struggling with, which I get. You look at it, well, okay, Army's going to run it, Arizona's going to throw it. You struggle with both of those. Yes, K-State is struggling with both of those right now, but it's the very specific things that they're struggling with that they'll be tested by. Like, the eye discipline thing will be put on full display against Army this week. And then next week against Arizona, like, they're just going to keep attacking your defensive backs. And so those guys have to step up at some point and do something. I want to throw this out here because you talk about, the passing numbers and all that with Sawyer Robertson, and it triggered this for me. I was doing some research. I don't even know why I thought of it beforehand. I think I was just scrolling through and I saw that Avery Johnson, do you know how many pass attempts he already has on the season, Drew?
He had 43 on Saturday. I think that he's probably at like 71, 72.
73 for the season. Do you have any guess how far back you have to go for a K-State quarterback to have thrown more passes than that in the first two games of a season?
I would say 2014 is probably my best guess.
It's a good guess. You would think Jake Waters. Through the first two games of 2014, Jake Waters only threw 57 passes. Okay, and you might remember, like, because you might go, oh, well, like, some of this may not end up being comparable necessarily because K-State had to play a power conference team to start and all that. Well, 2014 also played Iowa State in the first two games of the season and an FCS opponent. But yeah, it was only 57 in 2014. He threw 60 in 2013. The answer, though, is Josh Freeman in 2007. He threw 93 passes in the first two games of the season. Now, they started the year at Auburn where he threw 1 million passes in that game. But that's the position that K-State is in right now, that Avery Johnson in the first two games of the season has had to throw more passes than you ever did with Jake Waters when that was your offense in 13 and 14 was throwing the football. And, oh, by the way, as we know, 13, they screwed around with an FCS opponent and had to, try to sling it and get themselves going. So Avery Johnson, 73. Nobody has touched 60 except for Jake Waters in 2013. If you go back over the last 15 years, you have to go back 19 years to 2007 when Josh Freeman threw 93. Like that also illustrates the problem that K-State has right now, is that we've said it overall, like, for this specific team, you have to throw it that much. That's a problem for your season. Like, if throwing the football is what you're going to be best at on offense, that's an issue. But I think, to me, that signifies, like, this isn't just this team specific problem that they have. this is an overall team problem, like football problem that they have, where any team in this position, you would look at that and say 73 passes in the first 2 games of the season. That's a problem, especially when, like, if you get into the middle of conference play, you might have 2 weird games back to back, and you absolutely have to have it. But you shouldn't need it the first 2 games of the year, especially when, like, other teams should be going through the same problems as you, trying to figure stuff out. So on the offensive front, I mean, because defense, I think there's a world out there where this thing, it could fall into place at some point. Like the pieces are going to have to kind of rattle in there for a little bit, and maybe it gets figured out. I think Joe Klanderman probably has to do some self-reflection, though, to maybe change his philosophy on some things, because I would imagine that most people think that is one of the things that's killing them right now, is situationally he's not putting them in great spots at times. But offensively, do you have any hope that this thing's going to get corrected? Because I mean, the balance is needed, especially for a team like this.
Yeah, I think that the only real like holdout of hope would be that eventually they find a 5 on the offensive line that works. Like the offensive line has been, I think, for my money, the worst unit on the team, if you're just going by grades. Um, I think it was last week or this past Saturday where in the first 5 drives, K-State had 5 different offensive line combinations because they were trying to figure out who could play, and just none of them were performing well. So I think that's the room on offense where, like, if the offensive line figures it out, I think that the offense as a whole will be a lot better because, like we've talked about, I think that Matt Wells called 2 really solid games. There's been some sequences of plays that I think that he wants back, that the fans probably want back, and that the players probably want back. But I think that overall he's been pretty solid over the first 2 games. It's going to be, if you can't run the ball, things look very clunky on offense because your quarterback is just going to get hit a lot because teams will just start sending pressure. I mean, I talked about it in the post game after North Dakota. North Dakota didn't respect K-State's run game so much that they were blitzing 8 and said,
Yeah.
"Stop us," and like get a quick hitting passing game because we don't think that you can block in the run or in the pass. So we're just going to send 8 and hope that the pressure gets to Avery and gets a hit on him or just forces the ball out early. And it did a pretty good chunk of times on Saturday. So I think that if K-State finds a way to be able to run the ball effectively, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that is, we've seen Adonis Moisey get some carries. We've seen Jace Brown get some carries. You probably need a little bit more Davon Rice if he can handle it. You probably need a little bit less Joe Jackson just because he's played, I think, 110 snaps in the first 2 games, which is something that I don't think that anybody really expected. So you probably want a little bit less of him. That way you can keep him fresh because, he's done some good things this year. And then in the past when he's been in, but you probably just need him a little bit less to get the most effective Joe Jackson. You probably need a third running back to actually emerge and get some carries as well. But it all starts up front. If you can't block, you can have Jamal Charles in the backfield, and he's not going to really do anything. And K-State's not blocking. Like, I don't love Pro Football Focus and how they grade a lot of different things, but like the run block,
like Avery this week being the
yes.
lowest graded player on the offense. Like,
Yeah,
I get that there were some things that could have gone wrong, but are you kidding me? Also, if Pro Football Focus gave K-State an 84 special teams grade for this game.
Yeah, so like I don't love a lot of like what
I mean, they just sit around the Pro Football Focus offices and smoke crack. Is that what, like, I mean, if you're gonna half-ass it, like, just don't do it at all. But like, I'd love to know the logic there that you can see that many screw-ups on special teams and say 84.
a lot of their grades don't make a ton of sense to me, but it is pretty staggering when you look at the run blocking grades over the last 2 games because they are horrible. And it's not just offensive line. I mean, I think that Garrett Oakley's run blocking grade was like 35 on Saturday. That is terrible.
Yeah.
That's like essentially not even being out there.
Yeah. So you mentioned the snaps for a guy like Joe Jackson, and I think people are making a lot of noise about this and are frustrated by it and like, well, why can't you be out there that long? Another just reference point, like historical, not as historical as going back 19 seasons or whatever. First two games of last season, DJ Giddens played 82 snaps as the starting running back for K State. First two games of this season, Joe Jackson, who's not supposed to be the starting running back, has played 113 snaps. And Chris Kleiman said after the first game against Iowa State, they thought what, like only 20, 25 snaps for him in that game. And now here he is. He's played. If you thought if that logic was going to hold, then you'd put him around probably 50, 50. I'll even give you 60. Like 60 would have been the high end target that K State would have had for Joe Jackson through the first two games. He's played almost double that. So, like that, everything is just going to crap for K State right now. Like that's kind of the point of this show is that things are very, very dark right now for K State football. And it's more so about like, is there actually a way out of this, or is this like, should we just accept the warning signs for what they are and realize that this is going to go down as one of the most disappointing teams in K State history for a myriad of reasons?
I know there's a way out of it, but it's going to be tough. I mean, it's going to take real digging deep, not just with players, but coaching staff alike. Like everybody has to really do their job and pull their weight because right now, outside of I think the receivers, I think that you could say every other position is kind of underachieving. Like I think that Avery is probably on par. If you just look at the raw numbers, he's probably on par with about what we thought that he would be. But I think that you could say running backs are worse, tight ends are worse, offensive line is worse. Defensive line is a mixed bag because Toby Osensami, number one in the Big 12 right now in sacks. Cody Stufflebean, number 2 or number 3. But I don't think that they're doing a good job in run defense.
No, I mean, you watch any video back from the game this week, and it becomes apparent that like they were not helpful whatsoever in that, and their decision making between okay, is the running back or the quarterback going to have the ball in their hands over the next 2 seconds?
Defensive tackles, I think, have been pretty poor. They haven't done anything spectacular or terrible. Like they've just kind of been out there.
Yeah, they haven't noticeably made a difference to help step up and carry the load in really any moments where you're like everybody else is getting shredded. Can you at least do one thing to help us? And you haven't really seen that. And I know like it's a lot of plays. It's a tall ask for that position, but it just hasn't been noticeable. And in some ways, to me, that's something that tells you how everything's going. Like VJ Payne, you haven't even noticed he's been on the field.
No. Like I think linebackers, I think the starters are probably getting about what you expected. Like Gabe Powers has not been good.
No.
Rex Van Wy hasn't really been that good. Corners, Zayshawn Rich has had moments. And Marion Fortenberry has had moments. Donovan McIntosh has been kind of up and down.
Well, Zayshawn Rich has also had noticeably bad moments, like the pass interference penalty, where if he doesn't get the penalty, he's burnt for a touchdown.
That is where I'm actually going with the next group of safeties. And the safeties haven't been very good. And I think that kind of what sparked that Zayshawn Rich and needing to tackle the receiver was because the safeties got caught napping. So there hasn't been a unit that has been better than we expected besides wide receivers.
And if you watch this, any of the safeties, they seem to get caught napping a lot through the first 2 weeks of the season where they're late to react, or like one of the touchdowns that UND had where they get wide open and then there's like 3 guys that are in the frame, but they're nowhere close to the guy that goes into the end zone. It's so bad you can't tell who was supposed to be assigned to him on the play. You just look at it and go, could have been any of those 3 that was the responsibility, but they all just look lost out there. Like it's a real problem right now. And, Joe Klanderman's having to deal with the overall disaster that the defense has been. But then inside of that, like his own position group has behind Austin Romaine, the guy that's supposed to be the stud of your defense. He's not doing much. Wesley Fair has gotten exposed at a couple of times. It hasn't been great. Quay Moss, he's had some of the more plays that are up here, but he also has his moments where he's down here. And you could see that in the North Dakota game. Like they're just searching for answers everywhere. And while you can sympathize to some extent and be like, yeah, players have to make plays, like at the end of the day, like this is why these coaches are getting paid so much money from K-State, and it's you have to figure it out.
Yeah,
And
everybody,
K-State cannot be a 7-5 team this year. And that right now that looks like a generous thing to say about them. But like that is still problematic.
everybody has to do their job, starting with the coaching staff to the players to get this right. Uh, Kind of going back to that, what if I told you before the season started that the two position groups that we think are playing better than we expected? Because I think we were probably the people that were the highest on what the receiver room could be out of most people. Like
Maybe.
we,
I was still a little bit of a doubter, but I did towards the end start to buy the
but
Jerron Tibbs hype.
But what if I told you before the season that the two position groups that are playing above what we thought were the receivers and then kicker? What would you think has happened throughout this
I
start of the
mean, yeah,
season?
you would think that this team's 2-0 and they look unstoppable, because you would have just thought that like it's not that the running situation would be like that bad, but you at least didn't think that it would be as horrific as it's been. Like you thought, okay, it'll be fine. Like it may take some time. That's not been the case. Like it's been disastrous. And you look at the defense. Also thought, hey, there might be some things that take some time here. It's been a disaster. That they've got too many guys that are playing to the absolute worst of their abilities. Worst case scenario is playing out at a lot of positions for K-State right
Yes.
now.
And that is the biggest issue. I will say though, receivers. We talked about Jerron Tibbs maybe having the best wide receiver 2 season under Chris Kleiman and all the way back to 2014. 2-game sample size, but Jerron Tibbs and JB Bradley are on pace to both have the best wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 seasons at K-State in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we said it after the Iowa State game, and then he had another really good game. Jerron Bradley has already given you
More
way
than we expected.
more than I expected all season. Like he looks like you have 3 legitimate receivers on the field at any given time for K-State. Like Jerron Tibbs has looked like the worst of the 3 so far. And it's not that he's looked bad. He's not done as much as Brown and Bradley.
Yeah, and Tibbs, I think, has been kind of like the bad luck guy. You know, there's always a pitcher that is the bad luck guy on like run support. Jerron Tibbs is kind of in the bad luck guy of like every time he's been wide open, the protection has been so bad that Avery hasn't been able to give him the ball.
Yeah. He did get some of the luck back on the could have been intercepted touchdown that he caught on Saturday.
By the way, that's a play that 100% would have happened against K-State in the future.
Yeah.
Like that very much reminded me of like Arkansas State 2020, some of those catches.
One other like just notable thing, numbers wise, that illustrates where the state of certain members of the team is. K-State gave up 15 defensive pressures over the weekend, the most that they gave up last year in a game, and the only one that matched that was 16 against Houston in the rain. Another game, notably, where K-State had to throw the ball more than they should have. And that's kind of thing here. Like, yeah, Avery Johnson had some poor decisions on Saturday, but again, none of them actually cost you anything. He is the reason that you won the game. And like the pass protection was okay and to good against Iowa State. It went backwards against North Dakota. And that might be the most concerning thing about the offensive line is that now it's not just worrying about the fact that they can't block for the run. You have to start questioning, oh, are you not going to be able to actually give Avery Johnson enough time to make some of these throws? They did a little bit more of rolling him out intentionally when the play started on Saturday too. But
Is it bad when on 35% of your passes you're being pressured?
yeah, that doesn't sound good to me. So just gut feeling right now. Do you think that they get this thing fixed and figured out, and that this team is, where they need to be come that road trip to Baylor? Like, not just because there's a world where they win the next 3 games just fine, even with all their problems. But are
Yeah.
they going to go to Waco and we actually feel better about them as opposed to Groundhog Day over and over again? They just keep playing the North Dakota game and sneaking it out.
I'm gonna lean towards no, just because there's so much that needs to be fixed in such a short period of time. But I do think that it isn't crazy to think that like K-State could win by multiple scores on Saturday and then beat UCF by multiple scores. But like some of that I think has to stem towards like what is figuring it out to you? Is that like the defense doesn't look like a JV high school defense?
I want to feel like they actually have a chance to win all these games, because now if you go and look at the schedule, it's much different than what you initially anticipated, and it's not because of the opponents they're playing. Like, let's get that out of the way. Anybody that thinks the schedule is tougher because of who K-State's playing now, wrong. The schedule is
UT,
tougher because K-State looks like they suck.
yeah, that is 100% correct.
Like, K-State now
no
looks like a team that could lose any of the games on their schedule. And
no
it's not because of who they're playing.
no team besides Utah on the schedule really had an eye opening like, holy crap, this team might be a lot better than I thought. Like Oklahoma State was farting around with UT Martin last Thursday. KU, we'll see on KU. Like if
It's been better than I expected to start the year. Like, they've gone out but
they thought they played a team with a new head coach and blasted them.
well,
And then
K-State just did that against an FCS school and it didn't work out. So,
and then they played Wagner, who is horrible, and blasted them. Like they don't even have to win this week, I think, for me to think that they are better than we expected. Like if they lose that game by like a touchdown or less, like 7 points or less, like I think that's probably a tougher game than we thought. TCU, North Carolina, I think that says more about North Carolina than TCU, because I was not impressed with anything that North Carolina did. And then Baylor, like I've already talked about, like I was not very impressed with them. But like I think that there's a world where K-State can win these next 3 games by an average margin of victory of like 17-20, and you still don't really feel great, because and that's just more due to who they are playing in these next 3, as opposed to like what I think that it could look like. Because I mean, Arizona, I think, is the best team that K-State has in these next 3, but I'm still kind of waiting and seeing on Arizona, because there were parts of the Hawaii game that they looked awesome, and there were parts of the Hawaii game that I was like, this is the same Arizona as last year.
yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it ends up working out. I mean, you kind of pointed out, like, the difference is Noah Fafita wasn't anything spectacular in that game. He was 13 of 23 for 161 yards. So they did a lot of it in a totally different way than what they're accustomed to.
They didn't even like run spectacularly either. It was a very weird game.
Yeah. So, I mean, there were some gifts in there. They recovered 2 fumbles, and Hawaii threw 3 interceptions. So they had a lot of short fields there, which that would be the one thing that you would say, okay, well, K-State's not thrown any interceptions yet this year, and you would hope that you could. The fumbling on the problems that K-State's had fumbling the football, you could pretty easily erase if you just A, didn't suck on special teams, or B, just quit trying to return it. Because
Yeah.
K-State is at the stage right now, and this highlights where some of the problems are on how bad special teams has gotten, that you might as well just not even try to return kicks at this point in time, because there should be no confidence from anybody that you won't screw it up.
No, it's definitely a hold your breath, and well, sometimes you don't even get the chance to return it, and it's not like anything like as bad because of the blocking. It's like you just hit the punter on fourth and 3, and then you allow a first down. So it's kind of hold your breath anytime special teams goes out there at this point.
All right. Well, we'll talk about it more as the week progresses. We'll have a show tomorrow. We'll dive into more of this and keep having fun. And then Thursday we'll have the preview, and Friday we'll get something else out there for you since we had the short week and didn't do anything on Monday. So for Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Enjoy the next little bit. Try not to think about the Cats too much until you get bored. You fire up KSO again. You see, this team's in shambles right now. So not the most exciting time to be a K-State fan, but look, we'll see what Saturday brings, because there is a world where they could just get a couple things moving in the right direction, get incrementally better. But I think there is a drop dead date for this team where you're just going to have to accept that it's not going to get any better. Fortunately, they're not there yet, but it will come rather quickly with how the schedule sets up this year. For Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thanks for watching and listening to K-State Online.